This was your first feature film.
Yes.
Can you talk about, and you co-wrote the story, you directed it, can you talk about the origin of where this story, where these characters came from, what inspired you, and a little bit of what it was like to make this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always been a massive fan of American film and American ensemble film. Like growing up with John Hughes movies like The Breakfast Club and Robert Altman films like Shortcuts, The Big Chill, Lawrence Kasdan's Big Chill, been of my favourite films. And so I was really determined to make an ensemble story, which was hard to do sort of going through the Australian government system because a lot of people wanted to push me into making the film more about the wedding. But for me, the joy of the film was all the different storylines and how the characters came together, and the wedding sort of thing you've seen before a bit, but the relationships were what was fascinating to me. So my favourite filmmaker is James L. Brooks, and the way he mixes humour and drama, I think, is unparalleled. And films like Broadcast News are one of my favourite as well. So that's what I aspire to sort of make films that are human, that have laughter, have sadness, have a mix of both, and also fascinated with the multi-narrative format.
One of the things that I found fascinating when I first saw your film, and I loved it, is that if I didn't know it was directed by a woman, it has a very male sensibility because it is a romantic comedy, but there's an edge to it. And I suppose the tip-off that someone pointed out is it must have been in every guy's contract that you would see their butt. So, it's interesting to me. Like, can you talk a little bit about, when I first met you, you said you love to push the envelope a little bit, you like a little bit of shock, but it's got so many elements, I think, that really bridge the gap to where this could appeal as the perfect date movie because it's edgy enough for the guys and romantic enough for the girls. So talk a little bit about what you like and where this theme.
Well, I mean, I'm very interested in giving the film a bit of an edge. I didn't want it to be like every rom-com that you've seen before, and I didn't want to tie up all the stories with a nice neat bow. I thought it needed to be realistic, and life isn't like that. And I think I was talking to some girls before about how some critics mentioned all of the boys' behinds in the film, which, to be honest, I didn't notice when we were making it. It just seemed normal to me, but now, I do enjoy those parts, and, I think Josh enjoyed making those parts as well, which was great. But, I think there's relationship issues that, relate to men and women. And I've had a lot of men saying it, really touched them, and they identify with different characters, and as I think women do. So I'm just thrilled that, both men and women are enjoying the film.
Well, that's great. Now, the characters had so much depth to them. What was it like working with the actors? How much of this was scripted? Like, all of Josh's timing, all the little lines, the stutters. What was the balance in your relationship when working with them and developing the characters to what we saw on the screen?
Well, I had a really fantastic group of comedians and comic actors, as well as, actors that I've admired for years. So I really wanted to keep it open to them to contribute to their roles. And since it was a multi-narrative and they all had limited screen time but had to give a lot to sort of bring forth their presence in the film, so I gave them a bit of leeway and said, if you want to change lines, and some people stuck close to the script, and other people just took it for a ride here and there, like Josh, for instance, who came up with some really of the funniest parts of the film, I think. And like the wedding kiss, where he said to Isabel, she was supposed to break out crying, but he said, let me try and kiss you, and you can't, I can't quite make it work. So he sort of brought that to it, and different little bits different people brought, but so it's a mixture, and I think that's important if you can be open in making a film to let the actors contribute, because it's really them that's bringing forth the vision, and it's they're portraying the story. So I think the more you can give them to work with, the better the film's going to be in the end. So that's the way I like to work.
So the way that films are financed and made in Australia is completely different than how we do it in the United States. So can you tell them what the process is and the hoops you had to jump through, and what what it takes to make a film in Australia? Because over here we're very commercial. We go beg, borrow, and steal from family and friends and make a movie and hope to God that it sells?
Well, we have a government system in Australia where everybody applies for government funding. You need to have certain sales in place, like you need to have an Australian distributor attached, and you need to have an international sales agent attached. So you have to have market interest to get the film up. There are occasionally some people that just go and make a film sort of independently, you know, for $20,000 or something, but they find it really hard to break through because there's limited distribution in the country. And so the best way to go is to go for the government funding, but there's a small pool, so it's really difficult. There's a lot of competition, a lot of people going for it, and a lot of talented people. So, you know, I feel really lucky that our champion for our project was actually one of the other directors at Mousetrap, Lawrence Johnson. He was working at the government funding body we were applying for, and he loved the script and he championed it through, so we're very lucky to have him. Thanks, Lawrence, if you're watching.
Excellent. So at this point, are there any questions from people? Yes, Henry.
Can you tell us a little bit about...
Absolutely.
Can you tell us little about us, about your background? You know, first of all, it's an exceptional movie, exceptional. You know, I would nominate it for an Academy Award. I mean, it's really, I mean, it's like, you know, it's very witty, like a Woody Allen film too. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So I'd like to know, you know, what really prepared you to direct this, and also you wrote part of it, all of it?
Yes, I co-wrote the story, so I worked with a writer on it for years, and yeah, the film, I guess, my background, I went to film school, I worked in commercials and music videos and sort of honed the craft for years, so I've been working as a director for many years, short films, corporate kind of films. But this is my first feature. I'd done 3 shorts before that had travelled and done festivals, and so it was, yeah, a big project for my first feature. And a lot of people say, you know, you should do the first feature as a low budget 2-header that, you know, you don't have many locations, and we had 11 lead casts and 44 locations and a host of extras that, you know, all donated their time. That's why there's so many names in the credits. So yeah, we were. I feel very fortunate to have the cast that I had that made it that special, and to have, you know, so many people willing to put in for it. I feel lucky. So I guess there's a bit of luck. But thank you so much for your comments. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Other questions?
Can't wait for the next one.
Other questions, anybody? Oh, yeah. Yes.
Hello. I feel like Australians have a tendency to maybe make light of things, or if they're getting a few laughs, to like kind of keep going for it. Did you ever feel like you had to kind of say, hey, this, you know, we need this moment to be a little bit more serious, or did you have to like pull people back at all?
Well, I guess, yeah, that's so true, and that's a big challenge, especially making your first film, is knowing that and knowing. So to be honest, I probably let it go a couple of different ways a couple of times, because there's, you know, so many of the characters, pulling them all together and trying to get them to have the same tone was a real challenge, and having actors that were way beyond my experience sort of offering up all of this stuff, and me thinking, oh, I don't know if that fits in, but I'll let them go for it, and then I'll pull them back and see where we land. And I guess that all came together in editing as well, but it's definitely something I was conscious of all the way through, and when I wasn't sure, I got 2 different versions. So yeah, I hedged my bets. I guess.
Anyone else? Other? Yes.
I was wondering, did you make a conscious decision not to use subtitles on the Russian?
So the question for those of you who couldn't hear was there a conscious decision not to use subtitles on the Russian scenes?
Well, this is an interesting question. There actually is supposed to be subtitles on the Russian scenes. There was just a bit of a mishap in translation from Australia to the projectionists. And that's why they weren't playing today. But yeah, I've heard a lot of people saying they really like that angle. So, you know, I like to say it was deliberate, but yeah, no, usually it does have subtitles. So if you get the DVD, you can find out what they were saying.
So tell us about what's next. What's going on now for you? What are your next projects?
Well, I have a feature in development, which is another relationship style film that sort of takes it all a bit further, I think. And I'm also developing a television show as well, an 8-part sort of mini-series television show in Australia as well.